episode of Founderology Built to Break Through. My name is Kathleen Wood, and I am the founder of Kathleen Wood Partners, an award-winning growth strategy firm dedicated to working with founder-led businesses to propel them to new levels of success. I'm also the founder of the Founderology Growth Summit, which we are so excited to announce will be February 2nd through the 4th, 2026 in Austin, Texas. This is an amazing event for founders, by founders, where we bring together visionary restaurant founders to share, to connect, to engage, and to grow so that they can accelerate their businesses to new levels of success. So mark that in your calendar because you certainly do not want to miss that. And for those of you who have been following us on the Founderology podcast, I'm glad we're getting to know each other as you have the opportunity to hear me chat with game changers, innovators, and trailblazers who are building founder-led businesses to break through. And today, I am really excited to introduce a true trailblazer and game changer, Sabin Lomac, the energetic and passionate co-founder of Cousins Maine Lobster. You know, Sabin, I got to be honest with you. I've been a big fan of Cousins Maine Lobster almost since the beginning. I was so happy to see that a truck is coming to my neighborhood this week, so I will be starting my weekend with a delicious lobster roll.
Love
And
it.
congratulations to you and your cousin Jim on all your success. And it's
Thank
just
you.
a thrill to have you here today on Founderology.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. I like that. I'm energetic. I am energetic. How'd you know that? Yeah,
Absolutely.
you know that.
I've seen your videos, Sabin,
Yeah.
but I'm really excited to have you here because, you know, one of the things we always do at the Founderology podcast is we always ask the founders start out with their origin story. And I've got to believe at this point that, man, if people have not heard your origin story, this is going to be a sheer treat for them. But I know that so many people like myself have just been a witness to not only your origin story, but just the growth of Cousins Maine Lobster. So could you start by just sharing your origin story?
Yeah. You of cousins?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I grew up in Maine with my cousin. I'm the oldest boy in the family. Jimmy is the youngest, and we got a bunch of girl cousins in the middle. And so whenever we would do a family event, Jimmy and I always gravitated together, and we were playing sports and getting into trouble and doing all that stuff the boys do. And our childhood was rather simple and very blue collar, nothing too extravagant. But every holiday and every get together, there was always lobster because you grew up in southern Maine. That's kind of what you do. When I was about mid-20s, I moved to Los Angeles to continue and pursue an acting career, and Jim came out at one point to visit a girlfriend. And he said, "Hey, I'm coming out. I'd love to see you." I said, "Yeah, all right, whatever." And so he called me one day and he says, "Hey, I'm having lunch at this place. Are you close by?" And I was at far, and it happened to be in the same building where I was working. How auspicious. So I came downstairs and met him, and it was like old times. And I said, let's go out tonight. I'm going to take you out. So he ditched the girl. He went out with me, and we went out to this fancy sushi place on Sunset. We drank way too much. And as we were drinking, we were talking about family and life and death. And, I just lost my grandfather. And, we were just talking about like prioritizing life. And then we realized that we were both doing very entrepreneurial based jobs. I was also selling real estate. He was selling medical devices. And I was like, man, we should work together. We should do something. And it's like one of those drunken things. The more you drink, the better it sounds. We said, let's do lobster. Of course, lobster. And yeah, it was food trucks and all this thing, and we woke up the next day with a really bad hangover, and he called me 2 weeks later from Boston. And he's like, "What'd you think about that idea?" And I was like, I don't know. It doesn't sound that good anymore. And he just wouldn't leave me alone. I like to say he's very annoying. And he kept emailing and texting and sending spreadsheets and this and that. And finally I said, you know what? We're not going to fail because this kid is so tenacious. He won't leave me alone.
Right.
We worked on it for the next 12 months. We opened a food truck. And the rest is history.
That is, you know what? That's one of the greatest origin stories of all time, right? You're so right. At 2 a.m., a lot of ideas just, they're brilliant at that time. But the fact that Jim stays with it, you stay with it, and thus the beginning of Cousins Maine Lobster.
I think one thing I'd like to tell you, Kathleen, which I forgot to say, is we worked on it for about 12 months, but we didn't tell anyone the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we didn't tell anyone wasn't because we were worried about someone stealing the idea or this and that. We didn't want to hear any pessimism, and we didn't want to hear anyone, kind of give us negativity. And I bet if I had told you, hey, I'm going to do Maine lobster on a food truck, I said this 13 years ago, you might say, I don't know, it doesn't really, because it doesn't really match, right? Your stigma and your mentality of a food truck and Maine lobster are kind of two different universes.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the best things we did was we had an idea, we believed in it, and we just did it without asking others for their approval.
You know what, Sabin, I love that. And I hope that everyone takes that as an early on lesson right here. For the last 20 years, I've had the extraordinary pleasure and honor to be a growth strategist for so many founder led businesses. And one of the things that I have found with founders is that, they find the possible in the impossible. And to your point, when they start to share it, that's when, you ask people, well, did you ever own a food truck? No. Did you ever make lobster? No. Okay, but then how are you giving me this informed opinion on whether or not it's going to work or not? But I think that's such a valuable lesson because so many dreams die early on by the naysayers and the boobers and, the people that they're trying to help you and protect you, but at the same time, so I love the fact that you and Jim work on that for 12 months. Now, how do you do that when you're in LA, Jim's out on the East Coast? How are you both working on that before you get the first truck open?
It's just discipline. It was kind of a passion project. I'm working on more of the food truck employee back end things. I'd fly to Maine and we'd go work on sourcing the lobster, and it really also wasn't a thing that we were looking to make money. We said if we sold 37 lobster rolls a day, we'd break even. That's fine. Maybe we make 5-10 grand a year. That's fine. So we went into it with the best kind of outlook. We weren't looking for millions of dollars. And I think a lot of people when they start businesses, they're going, I'm gonna be a millionaire. I'm gonna retire. I'm gonna do all these things. And they don't make the right decisions because they're kind of already cutting corners from a monetary standpoint. We went into it and we said, listen, we just want to break even. We just want to make some money. We want to do it because this will be fun and it'll be a good story. Cousins working together. That's cool. That's good enough for us. But we just started working on it together. And we were drastically unprepared. We didn't know what we were doing. We had no idea. We have no credentials. We didn't go to business school. We didn't ever, none of these things which I think hinder people. Your point earlier is like, sometimes we're our own worst enemy, right? We're so hard on each. Well, I don't know how to do this. I've never owned a business. How can I do this? Well, you just do it. You just figure it out. And that's the entrepreneurial dream. That's the journey. So when we've been around a lot of these big wigs, Sharks and Mark Cuban and these people, you get around them and you realize the only difference between them and other people is that they just did it. And then they asked questions and they figured it out. It wasn't that they're, naturally brilliant or there's plenty of smart people in the world, but did they just do something and ask questions as they went, or were they scared? And so for 12 months, we just asked questions and figured it out. That's it. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't glamorous.
I love it. I love it. I do love the idea of asking the questions though, because of so often people get the pressure that they have to know all the answers, but it's the asking of the questions where the richness is found, right? Yeah. So Sabin, let me ask you this question though. When did you and Jim know, like you opened up the first truck, and when did you have like your aha moment where you're like, oh my gosh, we are going to sell more than 37 lobster rolls?
The first minute we opened the window. So we opened the window. I'll never forget. And I tell the story a lot. I was standing by the cashier window, and I turned to him, and we opened the window, and there was probably 60, 70 people in line. And it was this thing that hit me. And I said to Jim, this is going to be very big. You can't leave me. Because he was supposed to go back to Boston. He lived in Boston, and I was really nervous all of a sudden. I was like, oh my God, this guy's going to leave me and leave me stuck with this goddamn responsibility. So I was like, you can't leave. And I really got nervous, but I knew at that very moment, to answer your question. We went home that night. We had about $6,000 or $7,000 cash. We were counting it on my square glass coffee table. I had a 1-bedroom in West Hollywood. He's sleeping on an air mattress. And it looked like a drug deal in my house. And we're like, what the hell just happened? We think we were going to make like $500. And we got an email from Shark Tank that very night, the first night opening, asked if we'd ever consider going on the show.
No. Okay. So just a couple of unwinds here. Where's the location of where specifically was the location of the first
It
truck
was
then?
at the Portuguese Dining Hall in Artesia, California.
I love this, man.
Don't ask. No clue how we ended up there. No clue.
All right. And then the very first day you're open, the people from Shark Tank reach out to you and say, "Do you want to be on Shark Tank?"
They asked if we'd consider going on. Yeah, back then. I don't know if they still do it now, but this was season 4, I think. All right, season 3, season 4, something like that. And they reached out to about 20 entrepreneurs that they thought might be a good fit. You basically cut the first line, which is waiting in that long casting line. You still have to go through the casting process, but you skip that first part. I had put out a tweet about 3 days prior of a photo of Jimmy, myself, and my grandfather when we're like 6 or 3 on the rocks in Maine. I said, "Hey, if you want to go get some Maine lobster that's fresh, come here." We probably had 40 Twitter followers. All of them were my friends. But for some reason, I don't know how, this big website called Urban Daddy picked it up and they put it on the cover of their What's Hot to Do in LA that weekend. No clue how that happened.
Wow.
One of the people from Shark Tank saw that, and that's how they ended up there.
So what are you and Jim thinking when you get this email from Shark Tank after your first day?
I'd never heard of the show because I didn't, I don't really watch TV. I just watch sports, and it was season 4. It was still relatively new, right? And so I had no clue what it was. Jim was like, he had known, and we were like, "Oh, that's cool." Like, but we were so overwhelmed, and I mean, the first, I'd say the first couple of days, but really it's the first 13 years. Everywhere we were going in LA, we had 200 people line, 200 person in line every day, selling out every day. We were the biggest thing in LA. So it was really, really hard to think about anything else. Plus we had full-time jobs. I was managing about 10 realtors and like 100 listings plus acting. Jim was supposed to be, he was a medical device rep in Boston. He'd be on the phone. I'd hear him in the morning because it's 3 hours behind. So it'd be 4 in the morning my time, 7 in Boston, and he'd be on the phone with his boss and he'd be saying, "Oh, I'm stuck on the Tobin Bridge in traffic. I should be there soon." And I'm yelling. I'm like, "Shut up," because it's 4 in the morning. But was our life.
Right, right. So let's pull it through. You eventually do go on Shark Tank, though.
Yeah. We go on 2 months later.
Okay. And you're on Shark Tank, and you actually, at that point, Barbara Cochran, right, makes a decision to invest. So what happens? So now you've got the one food truck. Jim's still working. You're still working. You guys are very busy. And now 2 months later, you're on Shark Tank. She does make an offer. She does invest. And then what happens?
It's like pouring gas on a fire. We were already really, really busy. Once Shark Tank aired, it was kind of like just not manageable. I mean, we had to both quit our jobs. He had to move out here. We really just pulled off the Band-Aid and said, "Okay, if we're going to give this a real shot, we have to go all in." We had to get a second truck, which was like, I don't, for you that might sound like not that big of a deal, but for young kids like us, it was like it was like putting a restaurant on Mars. Like, it was so incomprehensible to think about doing that. We were so tired and so busy and like so in over our skis. Every day was like a mental challenge.
Yeah.
But we got a second truck, and then we got a third, and then a fourth, and this year will be over 100.
I know, it's so amazing. So, Sabin, what do you think? Like, Shark Tank obviously was a huge game changer, right?
Yeah.
For you and Jim, what do you think was like one of your was Shark Tank your breakthrough moment where you're like, now we really have to put this on steroids and go with it? Or was there something else that got you to think, wow, now we need to start franchising this?
Well, Shark Tank was the breakthrough moment for sure. After Shark Tank, everyone knew about us. That was, and it was a nationwide thing. It wasn't just a regional Los Angeles thing. Barbara came to us, and Barbara said, "You need to franchise this." That was her idea, and I had no idea what franchising even was. I didn't even know what that meant. To put it in perspective, I knew if I went to McDonald's here and there, I never knew that was a thing. So we had a lot of real concerned that, yeah, we were busy in Los Angeles, but would we be busy in Raleigh, North Carolina? Would we be busy in Dallas? Like, and so we sold 10 franchises right off the bat. We had about 2,000 leads, 2,000 opportunities, and we sold 10 because, we didn't know what the hell we were doing, and we wanted to make sure those people were successful. And as it turns out, we're more busy and successful in those regional areas: Raleigh, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Kansas City. If you think we were busy here, we're 3 times busier there. It's like what we were talking about before about the suburbs of Chicago. We cannot keep up.
No, I mean, that's why I'm excited. I live in Florida now, and I'm very excited to actually get to experience it, because in Chicago, every time I would drive by the trucks, the lines, and then I'd send my sisters out, the lines.
Yeah.
And it's, but it's an amazing, what an amazing journey. And so Barbara Cochran comes in and she says, you're going to franchise, you need to franchise. And that's been the model that you've been building from, correct?
Yes.
And then what made the decision to try to do the restaurants now in addition to the food trucks?
Just because we wanted to have the option for the consumer. For me personally, I'm not the type of guy that's going to go chase a food truck down and drive all across town to do it. I know myself.
Yeah.
I love places where I know where they are. I know when I can go. I know when the hours are. I'm that type of guy. So, having the consistency and availability and accessibility, I should say, we wanted to offer that to the consumer. A little bigger menu, some beer and wine, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I love that. What do you think's been one of the biggest challenges you faced thus far as you're trying to scale?
Biggest challenges scaling Cousins Maine Lobster. I'd say probably maintaining consistency. Making sure that we don't ever cut corners, making sure that, the first one is just as good as the 50th location, making sure that the franchise partners care just as much as you care, your staff cares just as much as you care, creating a culture that everyone is bought into is one of our strengths, but it's hard. It's really hard. So, I think if you look at brands like In-N-Out, if you go, their food, it's a hamburger, but it's phenomenal. It's consistently really, really good. But then if you go to other, hamburger places, it's kind of not that great. Why? It's the same thing. So we want to make sure that when people come, they feel special. So it's hard to do, it's really, really hard to do. And we're dealing with humans that are tired and that work long hours and that have their own personal things. So I'd say probably that the hardest part is just consistency and always, our motto is we always want you to treat the consumer like they're your mom. Yeah. So if my mom walked up to the window, she would forget what she was going to order. She would not know how to use the iPad to pay, and I would want that guy to be, or girl to be, sweet and kind to her.
Right.
That's what we are aimed to do.
I love it. Now, recently too, Sabin, you've expanded outside of the United States too.
Yep.
And
yep.
Go ahead.
No, we expanded to Taiwan. We have a lot of expansion coming up in I think in Dubai, Middle East, and Europe, and we have a lot of good opportunities kind of on the horizon. And it was remarkable. I remember when Jimmy and I went to Taiwan and we opened up a restaurant there, and it was truly unbelievable.
And you're opening restaurants, right? Not the food trucks.
We opened both there. Yep.
Oh, beautiful. My gosh, so you're probably introducing food trucks at a whole new level there too.
Yeah. It's really fun, and a lot of this is like when we open these locations, we open in the States, even in whether it's a franchisee or our corporate expansion, the buzz is so fun, and it's fun to watch now from even just, like we know a franchisee is going to get just punched in the face when they open. It's awesome. We tell them, like, you better get your rest because you're going to be really busy. So it's kind of like reliving that first day every time we open. We're opening in Minnesota in a couple weeks. We're opening in Milwaukee in a couple weeks, and like, the, good luck, good luck, because it is not. It is going to be crazy.
Oh,
So for us, at where we sit now, like we don't have to be there every single day. So we tell those guys, and we say, you better get your sleep because
right,
you're
right. You try your best, man. Have extra shoes. You're going to be running. Um, Sabin, when you think about the journey thus far, and being an entrepreneur, and a founder of a amazingly successful business, what do you think is one of the most overlooked traits, or conversely, what is one of the superpowers that you think founders have that make them different, or you found that even made you different from other people that are in business?
You mentioned it earlier, and I'm glad I didn't answer it. We had this vision of Barbara Corcoran because she had sold her business for 66 million, and she's on TV, and we put her on this pedestal, right? She's got to be a genius. So we started getting on the phone with Barbara, and what we noticed about her is she would constantly ask questions. And Barbara's a real tough New Yorker. And so she wouldn't really ask them in the most eloquent manner. She'd just say, "What's that? I don't know what that is." So you'd say, "Hey, this, that," and then she'd go, "I don't know what that is. What is that?" And you'd kind of be taken back. You'd go, "She didn't sound that polished." And then you'd say, "How do you not know this? I thought you knew everything," because that's what we believe, right? We believe that Mark Cuban knows everything. But the truth is, Mark Cuban doesn't know everything, but what he does is he has the humility and the ego to ask a question. And he's probably smart enough that he won't forget it. And Barbara is so street smart, she'll ask a question and then she won't forget it. So what do I learn from her? Most number one thing I learned from her is asking questions and just being vulnerable is your super strength. So when you're growing something, having the ego to ask a question, and who cares if you look stupid, or if you deem that is a thing, and once you learn it, you never forget. So what a lot of people do is they don't ask. Is any questions, anything, and they go, "No, not for me," and then they don't learn. So our superpower is we left our ego at the door, and we are very egotistical men. We want to be the best all the time. We are athletes. We want to be number one, but we've learned that business will humble you, business will destroy you and destroy your confidence. So you have to be thick-skinned. You have to be able to take punches in the face. You have to be able to ask questions. Um, Otherwise, you'll get run over. So I just think if I'm giving advice to like my son, who wants to be an entrepreneur or something like that, I'm saying, "Hey, buddy, ask a lot of questions."
Right,
They
right.
ask a lot of questions because if you're pretending to know it all, you're going to get run over.
Yeah, no, I think it's so great. I only laugh a little bit about that because you're right. How many of these have we sat through where you ask everybody, "Hey, here's Barbara, ask any question you want," and then they're like, "I don't have any questions. I don't want to look like I'm stupid." And it's kind of like that whole saying, "There are no stupid questions." I mean, it's the only stupid question is the one you don't want to ask, but probably five other people sitting around you have that same. I just love that, the humility to be able to ask the questions, and not, but asking it because you want to be the best, not because of for any other
Correct.
reason. You know what I mean? Like, you're truly
Correct.
driven to want to be the best. Why not find out from the best?
When I met Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, right?
Yep.
Who's hysterical, by the way. He's not, he plays that part. But this guy asked me so many questions about the Maine lobster industry. So, and he was just inquisitive. He's like, "So how's the industry? How's this? How's that? How's that? What's the catch like? How does the catch affect the price? How does the price?" I mean, he was asking a million questions. We were just having wine and we're just hanging out. But this guy's never going to forget that. And he's just an inquisitive, smart person. So what I learn now when I meet people and I ask them questions, most people don't do that. It's just fluff. So, "Hey, how's it going? What's new? What's topical?" They don't ask real questions. And that's the difference between those super successful, smart people and the others.
I Look, I hope everyone, I'm just going to tell you this, Saban. I hope everyone just took a note on that, because that is like, with the founders that I've worked with that are really very successful and are accelerating their business. When I think about them, what do they have in common? They all ask a lot of questions, and they're not, people are like, "Well, why don't they understand their business? Why are they asking these questions?" I'm like, because again, it comes back to they want to be successful, right? And because I still come from the school of the belief that the only thing that limits us is our beliefs. And if we don't challenge our beliefs, where do we go with that then? We
100%.
limit what we can, what our potential is.
Yeah, 100%. And, you can tell a person if their ego is in the way, it's never going to work. Never going to work. And we look at that. When we look at franchise partners, that's what we look for. We look at, are you willing to learn and do the dirty work and ask questions, or are you just so seasoned and so amazing that you don't have to? And if we get the vibe that you are like that, we won't partner with you.
I think that's another key point, right? You're going into long-term relationships with people, and
Yeah.
you guys worked very, very hard to start it, and you have to be a food truck. If anyone's ever worked in one, it's not a part-time thing. It's a
Yeah.
full-on restaurant on wheels, and it
Yeah.
demands that from you.
Hmm.
Sabin, thinking, kind of going along the same line, how would you describe your mindset, as you've been growing Cousins Maine Lobster? Because, there's people that have a growth mindset. There's people that have an optimistic mindset. There's people, what would you say, how would you describe your mindset as you've kind of approached Cousins Maine Lobster?
I try to say that I'm fearless.
Oh, that's good.
I like to I like to say that I'm not scared. I'm not scared of anything. I'm certainly not scared of failure. Um, in that type of leadership, what I've realized is I put that in my staff. I really pump that in my staff. So 9 out of 10 times when my staff comes to me with an idea, I just say, go do it. I don't really even listen, to be honest with you. I just say, sure, whatever. I trust you. And I'm not worried about losing money. I'm not worried about failing. I'm not worried about the negatives. I believe in the person that's representing our company because we have really amazing staff. And um, I think that even failure is a huge teacher and a huge motivator. So I like to say that I'm fearless. I like to say that I just go. And I think a lot of people get stuck in the mud of over analyzing the pros and cons and the yeses and the nos and all this stuff that can happen, and they don't do anything.
Yeah,
So for us, I'd rather make a mistake and learn than just sit around thinking about it.
I love
So
it.
I just go. I go and I go 100 miles an hour, and that's
Yeah.
kind of my thing.
No, I love it. I love it. One last question relative to you and Jim. How do you both divide? Do you both have kind of like your own roles in the
Yeah.
company? What does that look like?
Yeah, so it took us about maybe a year or a year and a half to figure that out because we were, doing everything, and it was getting annoying. We were arguing. You felt like he was micromanaging me and I was micromanaging him, and then really what it also we learned is like I'm not good at those things that I was kind of trying to do, and he's not really good at those things. So after about a year and a half, it kind of just weeded itself out, and then as we've grown, I used to do something and he used to do, now I have a team of people that I oversee that does this and a team that he oversees that does that. And now we don't even really, we'll talk about it. We'll check in. Um, and sometimes I want to know more than less. I'm usually a less guy. He wants to know more. Jim wants to know everything. I don't really, I trust him, like whatever. But Jim oversees all the procurement of the lobster and the numbers and how many pounds we need and how many pounds we average in December and all that. I have no clue. I mean, you should see his spreadsheets in there, but he has a whole team that works with him. I don't do any, but I oversee all of our legal and all of our social media, all of our PR, all of our staff, all of our corporate staff, all of our corporate, using that. And I'm really good at that. I'm much better than him. So what we've learned is like dividing and conquering. When you have a partnership, partnerships are amazing. They are like amazing if you can do what I just said because you get double the work done and you can conquer. The problem with partnerships are either A, people don't do what I just said, or B, people don't work at the same kind of pace, and then there becomes animosity. So what I've learned over the years is, and there's been times when I haven't worked as hard as Jim, or vice versa, or I've taken, I've had, listen, we started this business, we were in our 20s. We have families now, we have kids, we have life. I mean, there's things that are problems at times. If you if you look at your partner and you start judging them by how hard they're working, you have a big problem. So, Jim and I have a really great relationship where he does whatever he wants to do, I do whatever I want to do, and we trust that it's going to get done. That's it. That's where it stops.
Yeah.
But yeah, we divided all our stuff up organically, and now, it works really well.
Well, I think, Sabin, three things from that. Number one, trust. I mean, that's when the whole thing starts to, the minute that the trust is broken,
Yeah.
it's the minute where the partnership starts to fall to pieces. But then having that clarity on what your superpowers are, what Jim's are, and how they come together and complement each other to
Yeah.
grow the business. I think those are some, and communicating that, right?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
love your third one, not judging the effort as much as looking at the results. And I think so powerful. And I
Yeah,
do see
a lot of people forget that.
sideways.
They always judge and they say, "Well, I worked hard today. What were you doing? Where were you?
Right,
What did you
right.
do? Where are you at with that?" And you can feel their micromanagement,
Yeah.
so we don't do that. Today he's not even working. I know what he's doing today, and here I am doing this. He had a conflict and he had to do something. I said, "Okay, do what you got to do."
Right, right.
Like he had a conflict and it's his thing with his family. It's fine. But I'm
Yeah.
not going to hold that over his head. If anything,
No.
I'm just going to make fun of him for it, and that's the fun part of a partnership. And
Well, and it also,
we have franchisees that have mastered this, and they are thriving.
right. Well, it also fits into your family. It's about the family. So it makes total sense.
Yeah.
Sabin, I cannot believe this, but we're almost out of time again. I mean, I know you and I could talk a lot because there are
Yeah.
so many other questions. I
Go
mean,
all day. We pour some wine, and we can really make this
oh my
focused.
gosh, I'm going to take you up on that because, oh my God, I have so many questions on so many levels. But let's go with our fast five to kind of finish it off. So the first one is, because this is going to be a good one. What is one product that everyone needs to try when they go to Cousins Maine Lobster?
They have to get a lobster roll.
Of course.
Easy. That's easy.
Yeah.
Lobster roll. I mean, listen. If my mom was here, I would say get the Maine lobster roll. It's the traditional one. It's chilled mayonnaise. That's like a taste of our childhood. Our most popular menu item is the Connecticut roll. It's warm Maine lobster with a little butter and lemon.
Okay, I'm having both of those, so I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to that.
Yeah.
All right, number two, what's one word that describes your journey as the co-founder of Cousins Maine Lobster?
Unbelievable.
Oh, that's good. All right. What is one book, everyone, that you would recommend that everyone should read?
Yeah, I love that plug. Right, we have a book that's out, Cousins Maine Lobster, from one food truck to a multi-million-dollar whatever it is. Right, I mean, it's read the book. It's written from Jim and I's perspective. It's very relatable and approachable from two guys from Maine who didn't go to business school, who just kind of winged it. So if you find us relatable, read the book. I think it'll help.
Yeah, I just ordered my copy of the book too, and I can't wait to read it because the reviews on it were extraordinary. The playbook, the roadmap, whatever you want to call it, but the practical realities that you and Jim share off the chain. So thank you for that one. If you could share, you've given so much advice and so much insights, but if you could share one more piece of advice that you'd give to a founder who's listening right now, who's trying to figure out, that they're passionate about their dream, they want their vision to become a reality, what would be the piece of advice you'd give that founder?
Be authentic. Make sure you tell your story. Make sure that people know who they're supporting. People like to know who they're supporting. Be vulnerable. We talk about our family. We talk about our moms. We talk about our kids. We talk about our strengths, our weaknesses. Your vulnerability is also a superpower. Your transparency is a superpower. So I think that people don't do that enough, and I think people like supporting people. They like to know who is behind the business. And they like to know that even when you make mistakes, that you own it, and that's okay. So I'd say view that you got to outwork everybody, and you have to have the best product. If you're in the smoothie business and your smoothie's an 8 out of 10, get out of the business. You have to be a 10 out of 10, and you have to be able to outwork everybody. Those are my advice. Yeah, and if you're not willing to do that, and you're okay with mediocre results, then those will be the results you get.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If people wanted to learn more about you and Jim and Cousins Maine Lobster, where could they go find more information out?
Yeah. Both of our personal social medias, Instagram, you get a good glimpse of our lives and our behind the scenes. Cousins Maine Lobster on Instagram. Our website, we have an app. If you want to pre-order your food and not wait in the lines, you can download our app and you can just pre-order it and then just skip in front of all those people in line and get your food. Our website, just Google us, you'll find us. But I think the biggest takeaway I would tell it's Founderology. It's about founders, right? Founders are leaders. They're innovators. They don't necessarily, play by the rules. They just do whatever the hell comes into their mind, and they just go. So if you're on the fence of doing something, just do it.
Yeah.
You live your life and go do something. Just don't sit there and play by the thing. Oh, you have to do this you have to go to college to do this. You have to go to this. Just do whatever you want. Yeah. Be a good person. You got to be kind. You have to be ethical. And you have to put out a good product. But if you do that, you'll be successful.
I love it. I love follow your passion, your purpose, and you will be successful. I just, to your point, I love it. Just get out there and do it. Don't hold back. Life is short.
We've had a lot of people that have, especially in our early years, that came up to us when we were working on our truck, Jim and I, in the window, and they go, "You know what? I had this idea. I was going to do this," and I have no doubt that they did. The fundamental difference is they didn't.
Right.
And I did. And I did. It doesn't make me a genius.
Yeah. No, I love it. But it does make you brilliant and very successful. So congratulations. And Sabin, thank you. Really, thank you so much for sharing, your incredible story, right? But also your super practical insights. I hope people, I do hope people take a lot away from this, because you shared a lot, but what you're really sharing is, man, get out there and do it. And then you'll figure it out and, make it happen. And that's what's inspiring and motivating. So thank you so much. I wish you and Jim and your whole system continued success. Thanks for the app hack. I think everyone should be.
See, there you go.
Just trust me, I will. Easy. And now everyone else knows how to do that. So thank you for that. And I look forward to it. But again, congratulations on all your success. And thank you for your generosity of time and insights today. They've been invaluable.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. And for everyone that's been listening, take a lot of notes from today and make sure you download that app, because you really do want to cut the line when you see how long those lines are at a Cousins Maine Lobster. And until next time, please continue to subscribe. Please tell your friends about it. And we look forward to you joining us for our next episode of Founderology, Built to Break Through. Until then, get out there, just do it, and build your brand to break through.